I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes, first the Jew, then the Gentile. For in the gospel a righteousness of God is revealed, that is by faith, from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith. My brothers and sisters, in the same faith, based in Jesus Christ our Savior. What does thalassophobia have in common with nyctophobia? They are both words that I learned last week. They both end in phobia, but they're both kind of the same thing, kind of the same basic fear expressed in different ways. Thalassophobia is the fear of the ocean, fear of the sea. Consider how it would make you feel to be floating out on the open ocean, treading water, and the only thing you can see for miles upon miles are jagged waves dancing together. Or think about how it makes you feel to look down in the open ocean to see nothing for leagues upon leagues, nothing but dark, deep blue. That makes you uneasy, if that fills you with a certain dread, as it does to me, that's thalassophobia. Nyctophobia, I think every one of us goes through at some point in our lives. It's the fancy word for the fear of the dark. And maybe you had this in your childhood, maybe you have gotten over it, or maybe you still are afraid of the dark. That's okay, we're not going to shame you for that. But they're basically the same thing. Whether you're out on the open ocean, treading water, seeing nothing for miles upon miles, or your mom has just put you to bed and turned the lights off, the same kind of dread can overtake you. The fear that there's something in there. You don't know if some kind of creature, undersea creature, is watching you and heading toward you. You don't know what lies in the dark. It's the fear of the unknown. You're not positive what's going to happen next, what could happen, what danger lurks, what unknown danger, and the fear that you might have to face it alone. There's not a phobia word, I don't think, for what Abram was feeling. And Abram and Abraham are the same guy, but these events happened before God had appeared to Abram and said, now I'm going to start calling you Abraham. So if I accidentally call him Abraham a few times in this sermon, I hope you can give me a break. It's the same dude, okay? But he had woken up this day, and he looked out at the horizon. This day was different. Because when Abram looked at the horizon, it wasn't to watch the sun rise and then signal another day of work in his father Terah's household. He lived in a communal sojourner kind of lifestyle where families stuck together, probably for their whole lives. It wasn't the signal. He looked at the horizon not to see not to watch the sun rise and let him know that it was time to get his life going. But this time was different. This time the horizon is the destination. This time he is going to have to take a few steps forward, and he is filled with dread. How did he find himself in this situation, Mr. Abram, as well as his wife Sarai, as well as his nephew Lot and the people that belonged to him? Well, he had a conversation with God. And conversations with God have a way of getting people moving. God had appeared to Abram and he had said, he laid it on pretty thick. He said, go from your country. Go from the culture you know, the terrain, the landscape you know, the language you know, the customs you know. Put that in your rear view mirror, Abram. Go from your people. Go from the people you've been looking up to your whole lives. Leave your running buddies, the people you came up with. Leave everything that is familiar and your friends who are familiar to you and your people who are familiar to you. Leave your father's household. You had no plan of doing this for the rest of your life, Abraham. You were looking forward to the rest of your life working with your family, tending your flocks and working the ground with your family. But you're not going to do that anymore. You're going to leave your primary social relationships. Laying it on pretty thick. How would that make Abram feel as he takes his first few steps away from everything that he knows? Where am I going, he might wonder. What is this place like? What is the terrain there like? Am I going to be able to let my flocks and herds graze, or is there going to be enough for them? Am I going to find enough to eat? What are the people going to be like? What's this new culture going to be like? Who will I meet on the road? Will I stick out like a sore thumb because of where I'm from? Will people hear my accent and make fun of me? Will people make fun of me and my wife Sarai because we don't have any kids? And that is something highly valued in our culture. What's going to happen to me and to my loved ones? As Abraham sets forth, he has his wife with him, he has his nephew with him, he has the employees who work for him in his house, but he is the most alone he's ever been. What phobia word describes that? Whatever it is, I think you felt it before. Any of you who have ever actually had to literally move house, literally go somewhere, whether it's a station here in the U.S. or a deployment, to a place you've never even heard of, or maybe you have heard of it, but what you heard is not great. But now you got to go. You've felt this exact same feeling, haven't you? But this fear, this phobia, this dread is so persistent. It can come and find you even when you're at your house, even when you are in a comfortable situation. It can find you when the doctor calls you and lets you know that the test results are in, but he doesn't want to talk to you about it over the phone. You need to come in. It fills you with dread. It comes when you walk across the stage and you grab a diploma. You're done with school, and then you go and celebrate, and you have parties and stuff. But then you find yourself at home by yourself, wondering, for the first time that you have the chance to, maybe, what now? It happens when somebody very close to you texts you or says to you, I want to meet because we need to talk. It happens when somebody very close to you suddenly passes away. It happens to you anytime you are suddenly confronted with a new reality. And the only thing that you know about how life is going to be now is that things are never going to be the same. But other than that, you have nothing but questions. It's like you might as well be floating out on the open ocean, all by yourself, with no clue what's going to happen next. Or stuck in the pitch black dark, and you have no idea what's going to happen to you. You felt this. It's not a good feeling. In fact, it's probably one of our least favorite feelings. We do so much to avoid the unknown. I mean, Isaac Newton probably said it best, right? That an object that is at rest prefers to stay at rest. Or you could say a human being who is comfortable with the known and inside the familiar will choose to stay within the familiar. That's how afraid we are of the unknown. And we will sacrifice quite a bit to stay with the comfortable, to stick with the familiar, even when the comfortable and the familiar is not that great for us. We have a family member, someone close to us who suffers an addiction. We will look the other way even when their drinking or their using is highly problematic, but we won't say anything about it because we don't know what that would be like to confront them about this. And this is something we know, making excuses for their behavior. A lot of times we catch ourselves with problems in our relationships with our significant others or problems at work that could be resolved, but we don't want to bring it up for no other reason than the fact that we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to risk it. We don't know how that would go. And there's even some sins, some stuff that you and I do, that at our heart of hearts we probably know we shouldn't. But we're not going to confront that part of our hearts, probably for no other reason than it's what we know. It's what we're comfortable with. To change it would be too scary. We are so terrified of the unknown, but even when the familiar is killing us, even when it's harming us, we would rather stick with it, wouldn't we? So God bursts into Abram's life, and he says, you can't stay here. God is fully comfortable disrupting Abram's flow, disrupting his familiar, because that's the kind of God that he is. He would not be a loving God if he left us alone to cycle through our dysfunctional familiar, if he left us to choose what we find comfortable, and if he never disrupted us at all, he would be allowing us to go to our condemnation. And so God will appear to us and he will say that this or that behavior that we're doing is a sin, even though we don't like to hear it. He will disrupt us and he will cause us to be uncomfortable. He'll say that there are certain things that we should focus on doing, like sharing his word, by defining sin correctly, and by living for him, and by loving people, reaching across the aisle and loving people that we would never talk to if it were up to us. God has to disrupt our comfort zone. He has to get involved. God appears to Abram and he says, go. Go to this land. Leave everything you know to be familiar and go to this land. I will show you. He's disrupting Abram's entire life. But at the same time, he's defining what a relationship with God must be like. He's saying to Abram, he's saying to you and me, there is no such thing as a warm and loving relationship with God apart from letting him make us uncomfortable. God says to Abram, and he says to you and me, there's no such thing as feeling like you're good with God if you don't let him actually speak and disrupt your life once in a while. God calls Abram. He says, I'm going to show you this land. But he's not calling Abram or you or me into the unknown. He's not coming into your life and frustrating you just to go plop you out into the open ocean to tread water on your own. He doesn't come into your life to bring you into the darkness and to make you afraid. That's not his goal. That's not the whole story. The one thing that God gave Abram to do in this lesson is go. And then God gives himself 8 things to do by my count. The only thing Abram needs to worry about with his own behavior is to just go, is to just leave what's familiar. But then God gives him 8 things to hang on to. He says, the land you're going to go to, I will show you. And by that he's saying, I've picked out this land for you, Abram. I have good things in store for you, Abram, and I will protect you and safeguard you till you get there. He says to Abram, I'm going to make you into a great nation. Yeah, I know you're already 75 years old. The chances of you and Sarai having kids are slim to none, but I'm going to make sure that you do. I'm going to make sure you do get that thing you've been prioritizing. In fact, you're going to have so many descendants that you're going to be a great nation, and I'm going to be the one who causes that to happen, God says. He says, I'm going to bless you. When people watch what happens to you, Abram, they're going to know that there's no natural way that this could happen. He must be blessed by God. And because of this, when they see you, Abram, and when they interact with you, and when they make friends with you, they will be blessed. I'm going to make you into a blessing to others. So splendid your name and your reputation is going to be that anyone who hears about this will be blessed. All nations on earth will be blessed through you. So yes, God gets involved with Abram's situation and he calls him out of the comfortable, but he wraps him up so thoroughly in promises that there is no reason Abraham could possibly be afraid. He says, Abram, yes, I know I'm calling you to do something that is scary and that is new and that is beyond what you are comfortable with, but you are going to have me going with you. He does not go alone. And brothers and sisters, neither do you. Because when God spoke these words to Abram, he was thinking about you. When God appeared to Abram and he said, I'm going to make you a blessing to all nations on earth, he was talking about you. And that's why he had to appear to Abram. He said, you can't stay here because this doesn't fit my plan of salvation, Abram. Because I'm going to call you into this new land. And that land was called Canaan, where the Canaanites lived. It later became Israel. And a small spot of geography in Israel was Bethlehem, where a little baby was born. And that little baby, according to his human nature, could trace his descendants back to Abraham. Because Abraham had a son named Isaac, who had a son named Jacob, who had 12 sons who later became the 12 tribes of Israel, and from one of those tribes, Jesus was born. Fulfilling all of these promises to Abraham, but fulfilling them for your sake. Because God gets thoroughly involved with the human story. God was not comfortable to let Abraham nor us cycle through our dysfunctional familiar and make our way all the way to condemnation by allowing us to choose our comfortable sin. But he gets involved. He calls us out of our native land of sin into his grace. And he yokes himself to us. He wraps us up in his promises. He has wrapped himself up over you, robing you with the very righteousness of Jesus Christ that he was born to give to you, wrapping you up in the forgiveness of your sins and the promises that God will never leave you nor forsake you, that God will always go with you, the promises that there isn't a single thing that you will ever face that you face without God's presence. There isn't a single thing that can happen to you that happens to you apart from God's infinite, unfailing love. That's what he said to Abram. That's what he promises to you through the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That doesn't mean that it was automatically super easy for Abram. And our text says it. It says that he made his way all the way to Canaan with his nephew, with his wife Sarai, who, by the way, was believing and clinging to the same promises of Abraham. This is just as much a message about Sarai as him. They make it to Canaan, and they see that there are Canaanites there. Makes sense. But they're scary people. They do have customs that Abram has never seen before. In fact, they're very violent. They have a way of worship of their gods that is violent, that is grotesque, that involves human sacrifice. Abraham is seeing all this, and it's terrifying. And he has reason to say to himself, this is the land God's going to give to me? And God had said, I'm going to make you into a great nation. Okay, God, that means you're going to give me descendants, but days go on. Sarai doesn't get pregnant. In fact, it doesn't happen in Genesis for another 20-something years. You think that was always easy for Abram to go back to these promises and always trust in them with these difficulties, with these challenges? But then what God does is totally in keeping with a God whose character is defined by infinite, unfailing love. God sticks with this covenantal grace thing that he's shown us. He comes back to Abram, and he doesn't mind repeating himself. He doesn't mind saying, yes, Abram, this is the land I will give to you. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten my promises. Yes, Abram, I will make you into a great nation. Don't worry, I haven't changed my mind, even when it's scary. So that's what you and I should do, brothers and sisters. Because we're not standing before the land of Canaan witnessing a scary bunch of people, but sometimes you do stand before your own sinfulness. And you are afraid because of the ways that you can sin and sin big. And you wonder, is it true that God is on my side? Is it true that God cares about me when I'm so messed up? Is it true that I'm forgiven when I don't feel forgiven? I feel quite guilty. God doesn't mind reminding you that he marked you as his own dear child through your baptism. You're standing before the news of what's happening in our world, in your community, in your heart, and you're deeply, deeply troubled. And you wonder, okay, I know God said he's in control over all things and that it's his kingdom that will come, it's his will that will be done, and that he works all things for the good of those who love him, but it's really hard to believe right now. God doesn't mind reminding you that you are his little flock. He says, no, have no fear, because he's got this. He sits on the throne. It's true that you don't. And sometimes he's going to allow things to happen that don't make sense to you, but he doesn't command you to make sense out of them. He just commands you to trust in him, that he can handle it. He doesn't mind reminding you of those promises. See, God will never call you into a darkness or into the open ocean where it's up to you to face these challenges on your own, where it's up to you to prove how super of a believer you are. But you will always go, wherever you go, in the promises of God, with the presence of God, because he has so thoroughly bound himself to you in grace by his decision. See, there might be a temptation to read stories like these about Abram or about a hero of faith and think, wow, these people were super believers. For Abram to get up the next day and go immediately after this conversation with God, I don't know if I could do it. This is not a story about how amazing and wonderful Abram was. This is a story about how amazing and wonderful God was to Abram. Because remember, before this call, before this invitation, before the call to leave his father's house, Abram was nothing. There was nothing he did that offered to God something God wanted. There was nothing about Abram that attracted God to him and said, hey, maybe I'll make a covenant with that guy. It is 100% always the undeserved love and attention of God. And that's the exact same thing that's true for you. You have the exact same faith that Abram had. Sure, he sat on the other side of the timeline. He looked with eyes of faith into the future. He trusted that some point in the future God would fulfill these promises. And he physically did not see those promises fulfilled, but he trusted. You and I, we look to the past, where we see the son of Abraham, Jesus, according to his human nature, suffering on a cross for us, rising from the grave for us, uniting us into this family of faith. That's the same faith as Abraham. We trust in the grace of God. We trust that whatever God has said, he will fulfill. So in your life, in your sojourn through this world, no matter what journey you are taking, no matter what you face next, you go with God, just like Abram did. Amen.